Good morning, everyone. I'm excited to welcome you to today's presentation. We're going to explore a fascinating and important topic, the silent exodus happening inside homes across the country. On this first slide, you'll see the title, The Silent Exodus, which hints at a quiet but significant shift taking place. Over the course of this session, we'll look at what's driving this trend, its impact, and what it means for all of us. So, let's dive in and uncover the story behind this subtle but powerful movement. All right, let's talk about what this slide is really emphasizing. No slammed doors, no dramatic blow-ups, and no shouting matches. What does that tell us? It's about maintaining a sense of calm and respect, even when things get tough. Instead of reacting emotionally, we're encouraged to handle conflicts in a way that doesn't escalate the situation. This approach is key to healthy communication, especially in challenging moments. It helps us keep the conversation constructive rather than destructive. Ultimately, it's about creating an environment where issues can be addressed without resorting to dramatic farewells or heated exchanges. This sets a foundation for more positive interactions moving forward. Millions of married men over 40 aren't fighting for their marriages anymore. Instead, they're planning their escape. And what's really concerning is how subtle this departure has become. It's not always a dramatic, obvious breakup. No, it's more like a quiet withdrawal, a nearly invisible departure that can be hard to notice at first glance. This trend highlights how some men may be disconnecting emotionally or physically without making a big fuss. And that's a critical point to understand because it shows how these issues can quietly develop and grow. Recognizing this subtle shift is essential if we want to address the core problems before they become unmanageable. It underlines how important awareness and proactive communication are in saving these relationships. This isn't impulsive, and it isn't sudden. What we're really looking at is a multi-stage psychological withdrawal. It's a slow, almost silent unraveling that often goes unnoticed until it's too late. The key thing to understand here is that this process is gradual. It's not something that happens overnight. It's a series of small steps that build over time. Even though the person might appear normal on the surface, sitting at the dinner table, mowing the lawn, going to work, they are already mentally gone. The disconnection happens deep inside, long before anyone realizes it. By the time others start to notice changes, the individual has already left psychologically months or even years earlier. It's this mental departure that's so critical to recognize because it's often invisible until the damage is done. And this is what we mean by mentally gone, a quiet, almost unseen process that can have profound impacts if left unaddressed. Understanding this helps us see how important it is to catch these signs early, before the person is completely disconnected from themselves and their relationships. Let's take a closer look at this chart. It shows a significant increase in gray divorce rates since 1990, highlighting a clear trend among older couples. While we know that overall divorce rates among younger people have actually been decreasing, what's really striking here is that divorce among those over 50, what we call gray divorce, has more than doubled in that same time period. Now, a common statistic you might hear is that women initiate about 70% of divorces, but this number actually masks a more complex reality. There are many factors at play, and understanding this trend helps us see how divorce patterns are evolving for different age groups. This rise in gray divorce is part of a broader shift in societal attitudes towards marriage and individual fulfillment later in life. It's a trend that's reshaping how we think about relationships, aging, and independence. And by the time he reaches the end, there is rarely a path back. This slide pulls back the curtain on something many of us don't see. Those hidden psychological stages men go through long before they actually walk away for good. It's important to understand that this isn't about blaming anyone. It's about recognizing the profound, often unspoken pain that can lead a man to quietly dismantle a life he once vowed to build. Sometimes, he may not be the one to push the first legal domino, but he's the one who emotionally checked out years earlier, long before any official steps were taken. It's also crucial to realize that this doesn't necessarily mean he ended the marriage in his mind. long before the paperwork was filed. And that's what we're really highlighting here, the unseen end of a marriage, the internal process that often goes unnoticed. Understanding this helps us see the bigger picture and approach these situations with more empathy and insight. As we move to slide 7, let's focus on what I like to call the final exit. This is where the emotional disconnection reaches its peak, and the process becomes almost invisible to those left behind. You see, this isn't just about a single moment of departure. It's a series of stages, 5, in fact, that happen gradually over time. These stages include the parallel life, where he begins to create a separate world for himself, the secret logistics, where he plans in silence, the covert detachment, where he pulls away emotionally and physically, the quiet resignation, where he becomes less engaged, and finally, the final exit. What's crucial to understand is that to him, each of these steps feels necessary, almost like a natural progression. But to his partner, these stages are invisible. They often don't realize what's happening until it's far too late, because the process is so quiet and subtle. This gradual, 5-stage emotional disconnection is like a slow burn. It happens so quietly that most partners never even see it coming. And remember, a man's departure isn't just one moment in time. It's a process that unfolds over weeks or even months. It's a quiet, almost imperceptible journey that can have devastating effects on those left behind. From here on, he plays the part of a husband, but he is no longer in the marriage. He is simply enduring it. That quiet acceptance is the moment the marriage dies internally, even if the body continues moving for years. Eventually, he stopped trying. Not because he didn't care, but because he realized nothing would change. You might hear him say, "You're being dramatic. I'm tired too." Michael, who's 52, spent 3 years telling his wife he felt invisible. Her response was always the same. He felt like he was not a man, not a partner, not someone desired, admired, or respected. Instead, he was seen as a wallet, a chauffeur, a handyman, or a co-manager of logistics. He began to feel like a functional object in the household. But every attempt he made to communicate was met with defensiveness, minimization, or emotional dismissal. He tried to express his needs, his loneliness, his disconnection, but it was often fundamentally disrespected, taken for granted, dismissed, misunderstood, unappreciated, or unheard. Quiet resignation comes from years of feeling all these things. It's not peace, it's surrender. When the arguments stop, when he stops explaining himself, when he becomes quiet, that's a sign of something deeper. Hope is what fuels couples to keep trying, arguing, explaining, going to therapy, fighting for change. Even arguing can be a sign that someone still believes change is possible. But this is the moment a man internally gives up on the marriage. It's not explosive, it's a silent, devastating collapse of hope. And that's what we refer to as resignation. The first stage isn't anger. It's not resentment. It's not even conflict. It's this quiet resignation, the first step in the emotional process of withdrawal. He becomes a ghost in his own home. Inside, he carries a heavy burden of guilt, confusion, fear, and sadness, but he hides it well. He may still say, "I love you," but now it's just a reflex, not a true expression of feeling. There's no vulnerability, no sharing of dreams, no real emotional intimacy. It's just surface-level conversations. What's for dinner? Who's picking up the kids? Did you pay the bill? Emotionally, he's building a wall. Conversations shift to logistics only, creating a distance that's hard to see at first. What she didn't realize was that every long run, every new hobby like cycling, woodworking, or marathon training was actually a rehearsal, a practice round for being alone. David, who's 48, started marathon training, and his wife thought it was a healthy new habit. But it wasn't about the hobby itself. It was about escape. That obsession, that focus on training or other interests, is a way to pour energy into feeling capable, respected, and in control. He becomes deeply invested in hobbies or sports, and in doing so, spends more time alone, working more, and slowly building a separate life under the same roof. He stopped fighting because, deep down, the war is already over. To his partner, this might look like progress, fewer arguments, more calm. But in reality, it's the opposite. Where fights once erupted, now there's calm. Where he once defended himself passionately, now there's emotional neutrality. He no longer cares about outcomes. He becomes agreeable, but not because things are better. It's a sign of emotional withdrawal. He's physically present but emotionally absent, like someone trying to extricate himself from a burning building without making a fuss. After resignation comes this emotional withdrawal, a silent, covert detachment. This stage, the second phase, is what we call covert detachment, a subtle, often unnoticed retreat that can be just as damaging as outright conflict. It's a quiet, painful process that often goes unnoticed until it's deeply ingrained. Let's talk about how men often approach this stage of separation. They do so methodically, discreetly, and secretly. Divorce can be financially devastating, especially for men over 40, and they know this all too well. So, what do? They start examining the numbers carefully, making money their top priority. It's an instinct to prepare, even before stepping into the unknown. There's also a sense of guilt. Guilt about how the divorce might impact the family, and a strong desire to regain control over their lives. Protecting their future becomes a central focus, fueled by fears of financial ruin. This stage is really about a man preparing himself for a life-changing transition, all while acting like nothing's happening. He becomes a planner, a strategist, turning thoughts into action, quietly, meticulously. Now, this is where the secret logistics come into play. It's all about managing the details behind the scenes, often out of sight, but with a clear focus on securing his financial stability. This careful, strategic preparation is crucial, and it highlights how men often handle this period with a quiet resolve, aiming to protect themselves and their future, even if no one else sees it.